Our struggle. There are just 9 days to go before school starts. City Councilman Mark Treyger chairs the Education Committee and has called for a delayed start to in-person classes. He joins us this morning with more. Good morning to you, Councilman. How you doing?
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Vanessa. Good to be with you.
Hey, thanks for joining us this morning. This is a huge topic of conversation. New York City could be on the brink of a teacher strike. We haven't seen that in 25 years, 1975. What do you know about the latest talks between the union and the mayor and chancellor?
Well, I know that individual teaching chapters have been having conversations about what a strike entails. So I know President Mulgrew because I was a teacher. I was a UFT delegate, and he's not bluffing. So the UFT is setting up the infrastructure in the event of a strike. But Dan, I think it's also important to note that teachers are one part of a school community.
Right.
We also value, of course, our students, our social workers, nurses, counselors, school aides, principals, school food workers, school safety. It is an entire community. And so teachers are speaking up not just for their profession, but they're speaking up for the entire school family.
Right.
Because they know the mayor's plan is very inadequate and not safe at this time.
Yeah, Councilman, I come from a family of educators, so I know how this community operates and works. But, I want to ask you, you are pushing for a delayed start to the school year, right? We know it's just 9 days away. Have you spoken to the mayor and the chancellor? Why are they so opposed to delaying the start when there seems to be so much pushback?
I've been in touch with City Hall, and we have more calls scheduled. I am pushing for a delayed start to school reopening. I am pushing for the ability for the city to get borrowing authority, additional resources from Albany, because you need money and time to operationalize safety plans. I also believe, Dan, that we are too big to fully come back at once. Mm-hmm. There are pre-existing conditions before the pandemic that contribute to our inability to fully reopen. Overcrowding is not new. Lower class size fight is not new. The fight for more nurses, social workers is not new. So my proposal calls for prioritizing in-person services for younger children, elementary school, early childhood, with a phased-in approach. I believe that is the best path forward that actually addresses the needs of our most vulnerable children while managing density in a large city during this pandemic.
Yeah, the United Federation of Teachers has a long list of demands. We spoke to Michael Mulgrew here on the morning show about those demands, one of them being that he wanted to see every student and every teacher tested. Just to compare to Los Angeles for a second, LA has 700,000 students and 75,000 employees. They plan on putting $150 million to test everybody. What's the likelihood that is actually going to happen here in New York City, and especially by next Thursday?
Well, I applaud Los Angeles for having a testing conversation and a testing strategy, because right now in New York City, we just don't have one. The likelihood of that being resolved by next week, I think, is not very likely. I think that these conversations are continuing right now. But right now, Dan, it's very important that we note this. In New York City, if you go to a city MD site, I am being told by my constituents that it takes up to 2 weeks or even more to get test results back. That defeats the whole purpose of a contact trace program. So if the city administration is serious about testing, it needs to get its act together, because right now New York City does not have adequate testing infrastructure in place.
Aside from calling for a delayed opening, what, if any, steps can your committee take to move this process along and try to ease some of these concerns for parents, as it seems like all the demands aren't going to be met by next week?
So I'm holding an emergency hearing this Thursday. City Council Education Committee will be hearing my resolution on delaying the start of school reopening this Thursday. Folks can come. It's a public virtual meeting over Zoom. Folks can testify. I've been hearing from parents, educators from across the entire 5 boroughs. Really concerning stories about how their schools still do not have PPE. There's still questions about staffing, inadequate resources.
Ventilation.
I also think, Dan, it's insulting for the mayor to suggest that PTAs have to fundraise to keep kids safe in schools. That's just not acceptable. And so I will continue to hold them accountable. I will use my platform to make government honest. And that's my job. I will continue to do my job.
Lastly, Councilman, there's a lot of outdoor learning plans that are taking place, but also there's a big concern about ventilation systems. Do you know how far along the process is of making sure all the ventilation systems in all of the schools are meeting status quo?
So, Dan, last week the mayor pledged, a comprehensive, robust ventilation inspection system process. And the following day, I came across a photograph and a video of school officials holding up a stick with toilet paper, waving it in the air to determine if the ventilation system is working. Now, the mayor claims that this is approved by CDC guidance. I read the CDC guidance, Dan. There is no mention of toilet paper in the CDC guidance. It actually prefers a handheld machine for numerical value each day. So they are claiming that they're doing their inspections. I could tell you, I worked in a school building. I worked in a neighborhood that their schools were built with money from the New Deal in the 1930s that haven't seen wiring upgrades since the New Deal.
Right.
They're very old buildings. So they're still very inadequate, and it will not be resolved within 1 week. I assure you of that, Dan.
All right, to be continued after you have that emergency hearing, or if you do get any new information, I welcome you back here to talk about this important topic. All parents are listening.
Anytime, Dan. Thank you so much.
Councilman Treyger, thank you for your time.